Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Hello, and welcome to episode 1 of We the Working Class. This is the official start of We the Working Class. Last time was just an intro. But this is to be a place to spread socialist ideals, union awareness, as well as a reminder that if you're struggling to make ends meet in this bullshit economy as an American, you're not alone. I'm right there with you, along with millions of others. So I want to start off with kind of an experience that I had with being unemployed and the impact it has on lives. So don't feel bad if you had to make the same calls as I did this week, but and this is not to elicit sympathy in any means. It's commiseration, not sympathy. So I'll start off and say that I did not push my family to enjoy the beautiful weather. I kind of let everyone just kind of settle in and play video games, and instead of like, hey, let's go see the lake or the river or go hike in the mountains or something. Just like those things are free to do, but the gas to get out there, and then if you could take a picnic, but if you have to stop and get something to drink or something to eat, like it just adds up. And we were so so down that in our balance that I was just like, let's chill here. I won't even drive 30 miles to the to the river to fish. I'm like constantly checking my account balance like it's TikTok or something. I don't know. I don't check TikTok, but there's sometimes it feels sort of hopeless, and like you try to turn on the news or watch YouTube to feel a little better, and you're just like, oh my God, these idiots are screwing everything up even further. So I try to find some positive stuff, and I'll try to share it here as well. My spirits were lifted a little this week when I listened to an episode of Current Affairs. I'll link in the description, where Eric Beinhocker and Nick Hanauer, a professor of public policy at Oxford and an entrepreneur / consultant, respectively, who have recently released Markets Built for Humans, a precursor to their upcoming book, in which they lay out a case for total replacement of the neoliberal economic system with a middle-out economics plan and market humanism. This would shift our economic model from one that rewards worker exploitation and government takeover by plutocrats to a model which supports and expands the middle class, providing a better opportunity for more Americans, which in turn builds a more robust and prosperous economy for us all. Our current system of neoliberalism, colloquially referred to as trickle-down economics, which Beinhocker and Hanauer argue started in the 1970s and reached its breaking point in 2008, the housing crisis or subprime mortgage crisis. It almost broke our whole economy if the government hadn't stepped in. So, we've continued with these policies, even though they're bad, for almost 2 decades since. So, a total of 5 decades now that we've been living under this system that has really only benefited a few people. The philosopher and economist Adam Smith, in his treatise titled The Theory of Moral Sentiments, argues that markets rely on the moral and social fabric of society. Beinhocker and Hanauer state, our challenge now is to repair that fabric, to rebuild an economy that rewards cooperation and innovation, not just exploitation and extraction, and one that puts human flourishing at its center. This will not only build a more equitable economy and society, it reinforces the trust in society, which is essential to democracy's survival. This is in contrast to neoliberalism, which displays a staggering disparity, glaringly in the form of scrutiny. Every raise or investment for the working class needs a corporate or OMB analysis before any raises are even considered, sometimes deciding against the raise when positive results are implicated by those analyses, such as like minimum wage. It's been shown time and time again. You raise minimum wage, you build up the lower and middle classes, you make a better society, lower crime, etc. Referring again to Beinhocker and Hanauer, this double standard is not accidental. It is a natural outgrowth of the ideology which equates wealth with merit and markets with virtue. This leads to the degradation of the morality of our economy, which we can plainly see with the recent trend of enshittification and exponential cost increases without any substantive value. I watched a video recently. I'll try to link it in the description if I kept the link. It dives into the pastime of bowling. Now, I grew up in the 80s and early 90s. My mom was on a bowling league when I was a little kid. They had bowling shoes and everything. It was cool, and I loved going to bowling alleys. And yeah, even through my 20s, like going bowling was just fun and cheap. So it was great. Drink break. So in this video, it's all about one company, Bolero. It changed their VC firm. They started buying independent bowling alleys. They changed it from a wholesome, affordable family event into basically a nightclub with bowling lanes as an afterthought. I used to go bowling at university even. Man, that was so great. It was affordable. Went with my mom as a kid on dates later on. In the video, they point out that in the 90s, a family could spend an evening out. Like a family of 4 people could spend an evening out for $35 at bowling. Like a whole Friday night bowling, $35. Imagine what you could do for that today. Like you could rent a movie and DoorDash some French fries. But this presenter is a younger gentleman, and his group of friends went out to one of these Bolero places. Their outing was over $320, or around $77 per person. They got their hour or two of bowling, some beers, a beer each, and some nachos to share. $320. It's bad. And, federal minimum wages haven't gone up in 18 years. So it's egregious. State minimums have gone up. 13 states use the federal minimum wage as a standard, though. But even like around here where Kshama Swant actually in Seattle got the first $15 an hour independent, like for a city. So that helped there. Still kind of hard in Seattle. There's a lot of problems. You can't solve it in just one term, right? Or 10 years. A couple of years. So anyway, but even $15 an hour is still $10 an hour behind the federal minimum wage when you adjust it from the last time it was raised. I was a young man to today. Like it should be at like $27 or $28 an hour. So we're not even at the level yet. So if you're a victim of enshittification, know that there will be no consequences for those who did this until we can rebuild a system that works for everybody. And that's why we're here. To remind us not to get discouraged, even though I probably sound discouraged, but it sucks so much. But I should be giving you hope, like not telling you it sucks. Let's not get discouraged. We've been here before with the robber barons, and we overcame. Good old, where is he? It's reversed. Teddy Roosevelt, trust buster. We can do it again. I mean, come on. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes, and we can do this again. Right now, the Epstein class has no consequences, but when we rebuild, they'll have no quarter. Yeah, I'm proud of that line. Anyhow, I'll provide links to the current affair interview, which I highly recommend listening to. I think you should honestly like and subscribe to Current Affairs. Like, subscribe and watch all of their videos. They're great. If you can, subscribe to their print edition too. They don't do ads, so It's not, it's actually kind of an experience reading their magazine because you're like expecting an ad to pop out, but no, it's like a goofy ad for duck pants or something. Anyway, so drink break. On to our history lesson today. This is so good. I like this one. Uh, the 1636 fishermen strike in Maine, which was, yeah, it was more of a walkout quitting, but it was still over wages and stuff instead of civil liberties like last time. Which is why I say this is the first episode, because it's the first working, workers' rights strike there was. So it's still a fascinating story. Like, it highlighted the massive differences in purchasing power of the day. I learned that. Like, you could buy a chicken with a shilling in 1636. I thought that was awesome. I'm easily amused, though, as you can see. And then I also learned how shitty you can treat fishermen in 17th century New England before they'll quit. It's very shitty. So, we have in history, I don't know if I've mentioned it before, I started out studying history. Ancient Mediterranean was my jam. But I did a project on the historical movements of demographic classes in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is where I went to school. And yeah, going back to 2008, like I was right at the point of graduating with my history degree at that point, and everything went tits up, and I was just like, and I saw museums are cutting staff, libraries are closing. Of course, everything in education gets cut first because we can't give up corporate welfare. I don't know. If it ever made sense to me, like I'd be able to explain it well enough because it makes sense to me. I would share that with you, of course. But anyway, throughout history, obviously we have most of our history comes from the ruling class. We have a lot of information about farms, forts, livestock trades, and encountering battles with the indigenous people. A lot of that was written in Jamestown, we saw. It's thankfully, like, since this was kind of like, people were still kind of trailblazing over here. Europeans were trailblazing over here. I definitely do not want to imply at any point that I have anything less than the utmost respect for our indigenous tribes and First Nations people. Yeah, Europeans are here. I'm sorry. And that we did bad things to get it. But so in history, we have so much information about farms, forts, livestock trades, encounters, battles with indigenous tribes and people. We know what rich people were up to. But at this time, in 1632, there had actually been fishermen, like fishing colonies in Maine for about 100 years. So starting in the early 16th century, rich people were sending small groups of fishermen over here and creating little colonies. So our story is going to be when English gentleman Richard Hawley established a fishing colony on Richmond Island in 1632. He employed 60 people at its height, which was a few years, around 1640. Most of them were fishermen, obviously. It's pretty cool that we actually have the salaries and like so many details from this. And we have, I think his name Edmund Winter. He was the son-in-law and manager of the Richmond fishing thing, and he would send letters back to his father-in-law Hawley. And since they were not just business, they also had some familial connections. He was more liberal in his complaints, let's say. But yeah, it was. I can rifle off the tedious list of numbers and other stuff, like what they harvested, how the pay structure worked. If you're interested in that, I'll make a standalone video covering the Hawley papers, which is where I got like all of this information today. It was a secondhand source, but it's still pretty good. Or actually, it was an, an analysis of the Hawley papers by Churchill, E.A. Churchill. So, anyway, back to the causes of our story of dissenting fishermen. You may or may not know that the Atlantic Ocean is a large body of water, and by law, the larger body of water, the more dangerous it is. Hence, you need kind of a, I wouldn't go out on the Atlantic Ocean anything less than a 40-foot boat, but these guys got a 20-foot boat called shallops. So these Trelawney papers had a pretty comprehensive description of what fishing was like. 3 men to a boat, 2 throwing lines, one on, and one was basically gutting and prepping the fish and stacking them in the hold. Like there's just 3 guys out in this little boat. So, and the one who was working up front was covered by a canvas tarp, and that's where they would end up gutting and removing the heads of the fish after they caught their limit. They pushed the effluents into the ocean through a hole in the bow. Each man tending the lines were expected to catch 200 to 300 fish per day. I'll actually put a picture of the boat up right here because these are, it looks bigger than it is. Like you have to imagine this thing being able to fit like in a decent sized bedroom, like or a big living room. Like these aren't that big. Anyway, here's a shallop. I don't know where it's going to show up on the screen. So yeah, I like to fish, but it's hard for me to comprehend being out on an ocean in a 20-foot boat, catching 300 fish per day. Like, it's insane. Like, so you've got this little boat. They have to store up to 400 to 600 fish on board. Yeah, my imagination just blew up at this one. It's dangerous. They're coming from the time you don't have, like these guys are just wearing oilskins and sweaters, and I mean, imagine being wet all day. You've got to work, pull in these fish. I will be honest, I've never caught an Atlantic cod. I don't know how the heck big they are. If you know, put it in the comments, like, subscribe. Yeah, it's just hard for me to comprehend. And then like you're in the winter, you're in the cold, snowing, storming, giant waves. Like, shoot, I live on the Pacific coast, and I've seen the Atlantic. I don't think that one is calmer than the other, though, like in general. If you have any insight into that, you're an oceanologist or something, let me know. But yeah, there's winter reports in Winter, the guy, sorry, reports that the whole crew did not return one morning one afternoon in February of 1635. They were carrying too much sail. So, like, again, prior to motor or even steamboats, these guys have to sail their boat out there, catch 600 fish, got them, had them, and then come back in. Sometimes in storms. Like, there's not even a guy just piloting the boat. Like, that's crazy to me. And these 3-man crews, there were 4 of them. 3 of them were fishing at one time, and the other one was preparing the boats and salting the fish back at the colony. And that was the whole purpose, obviously. Colonies aren't, they need to be self-sufficient as well as provide a profit to extract. So they would just ship these every couple of years. They'd send these giant boats full of fish back to England, and yeah, that's pretty nasty. But along with being potentially deadly, the fishermen worked through the nights, when the fishing was good anyway. And there's stories of men falling asleep during dinner, or actually, like, I liked this one. They would sail to a little island in the morning when they'd go out for fishing, and then they would just basically, like, park the boat, go in, and, like, sleep, or, just play some games, or just hang out on this island for the day, and then they'd go back and be like, wow, fishing sucked today. Like, we didn't catch anything. Better luck tomorrow. Gonna get it. So I think that's pretty funny. Yeah. And these fishermen, again, this is, 1630. Like, these weren't people born in America. I mean, America, United States wasn't a thing at this point. So, so these guys were brought to the Maine coast, and this is important because this is their employment situation. So they weren't just like, I'm going to go to work every day. They were brought over from England on 3-year contracts. So for these 3 years, they would be told you're getting this much for a base pay, and then when you catch, like, we'll sell the catch, and you get a certain percentage of that. So that's how the pay structure worked. But it was usually, you'd get paid more towards the end of this, end of your contract. So the places that were mentioned in the Hawley papers were Cornwall, Plymouth, Padstow, and Cornwall. So those are places in England, obviously, the western coast where people came from. These men and women were sent to Maine on contracts of 3 years in length, hired by the owner of the fishing operation, Hawley in our case. One of these 3-year deployments included Reverend Richard Gibson to attend to the spiritual needs of the island inhabitants. And the island inhabitants really liked him, but he apparently didn't get along with Winter. But also in this deployment was a man named John Lander, who, upon landing on the island, he actually asked for his payment up front. He was like, well, I'll stay here and I'll be here because I want to make the full amount, but like I need some bling to live on. And so they didn't, so Winter was like, no. And so John Landers and he incited 6 other people. One was a brewer. I think one was a maidservant. So they weren't all fishermen. He asked for his payment up front. A few others said 6 men in total. They left along with Landers and moved to another colony. That seems crazy to me. Like, I've got 3 years here. They're going to come back and pick me up here at Richmond Island. But then you just dip and go to another place? Like, that's crazy. But he ended up going to a place called I'm going to massacre this word, I'm sorry. Piscataqua. If you're a New Englander, let me know. Or a Mainer, let me know if I did that right. But Winter, it's funny, of course, he was the one trying to keep order on the island. He said, Landers poisoned the men, meaning he organized them to leave. Landers and his collaborators moved on. He later sued Winter and won a 10-pound reward. That I thought was really cool. Of course, that I had to get as an external source. I can't cite 100% where the court battle was won, but I do, because Winter's not going to say, "Oh, this guy sued me." So instead, we have writing later in the Hawley papers where Winter talks about the fishermen loyal to Winter barricaded the island when the governor's agents came to pick up the 10 pounds. That's like a year's salary for these guys. So Winter was like, well, I don't want to pay them. And these other guys were so loyal to Winter that they barricaded the island and did not allow the government agents to collect the sum. So I personally found this story fascinating. And even though there was only a few scattered lines within the papers referring to today's subject, I read the whole document. So I couldn't find the original Hawley papers, which would have been nice, but they would have been written in Old English, so it would have been kind of hard for me to read them. I could have guessed at a bunch of stuff, but yeah, if anyone has those or has access to them, I would like to take a look. So yeah. So for anyone watching this, my friends and family, so far only, yeah, I'll make an episode going into that if you want, or going into something else. Otherwise, I'm going to move forward, and I think next week is the Footmen of New York. I have to start doing some research there, so we'll do that. But thank you all for watching. Please check out the current affairs video. There's also, if you're in Western Washington, there's a pretty good interview with Shama Svant on their channel as well. She's running to replace Adam Smith in the primaries, which are due August 4th. So you've got like 7 days to watch that video and get it in there. And I have like 1 day to get this out. So that's accurate. All right. I love you all. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.